recording.
Recording's on the line.
I'm going to lift it up a little bit because half your head is there.
Wherever you see is good. So, the Pele starts off, Avala Kadosh Baruch Hu. Starts off speaking about the importance of how much we have to love Hashem. Love towards Hashem. There's a mitzvah in the Torah to love Hashem. Before we start the Pele, I guess we'll say the Rambam. The Rambam asks, how can a person love Hashem? Right? Can't see Hashem. How could you love Hashem? So the Rambam says, you go out and you look around in the world and you see everything that Hashem created and everything that Hashem did. And you see the whole entire world, and he says that automatically brings you to love Hashem, to fear Hashem. You become astounded by how amazing the world Hashem is, how amazing the world that Hashem created is. If you really contemplate in the world, it's an unbelievable thing. But he says loving Hashem is one of the 613 mitzvot, and it's a mitzvah that a person can fulfill at every moment, all the time. That every single time a person, at any moment, in every place that a person is in, he can fulfill this mitzvah by just thinking about the mitzvah of loving Hashem. He says, the person's mind is constantly occupied, a person's mind is constantly working. A person's mind is always thinking about something. A person generally doesn't just sit and think about nothing. Even when he's thinking about nothing, it's really something. It's just nothing for him. So it says, if a person whose mind is constantly working is letting his mind just wander around and he's thinking about nonsense, right? It says, instead of thinking about loving Hashem and mitzvah, b'emunah, and bitachon, and ahavat Hashem, so a person can constantly be using his mind to make mitzvot, and the more a person thinks about Hashem, the more a person thinks about this mitzvah of loving Hashem, the more a person contemplates, right, and the mitzvot that are dependent on a person's mind, it brings more and more kiddusha to a person's neshama, brings a person closer and closer to Hashem. When a person could use his mind to contemplate on the things that benefit a person's neshama, that bring a person closer to Hashem. But instead of that, a person contemplates on things that have absolutely no benefit to him. Right? Many times people think about things that really don't bring a person to no benefit whatsoever. I'll tell you even more. I'll tell you something very scary. The Ben Ish Chai, I wasn't planning on saying this, I'll say it anyways. The Ben Ish Chai says, based on a Gemara, based on a Rashi in a Gemara, he says, Machshava mo'ila levatel davar. What does that mean? A person's mind could play out what a person's supposed to happen in reality. It's a very deep idea. I'll explain to you what I mean. It goes at length, so just saying in short. He brings a Gemara that says that when a person thinks and he dwells and he starts to think deeply into things, right? It says that it's considered as if those things happened. What do I mean by that? Right? He says, for example, he brings it for the good and for the non-good, but we're going to focus on the good. The Ben Ish Chai says that if a person on Rosh Hashanah, for example, it was decreed on him to make like a very big deal or something like that, and a person is there and he's sitting and he's thinking and he's living through it mentally. Say a person thinks, wow, I'm going to make this deal, I'm going to make that amount, I'm going to buy this, I'm going to flip that. A person is sitting and he's dwelling on it and he's living through it as if it's happening. The Ben Ish Chai says, if it was decreed that it should happen, it could be that it won't happen anymore, because the fact that a person lived through it emotionally and mentally, it's going to be considered as if it happened already.
Wow.
Very scary.
Overthinking leads to sadness.
Very, that's for sure now. That's something else.
That's for sure. That's not
Right? But you hear what he's saying? He says a person's mind can help a person even destroy something that's supposed to come to him when he thinks about it too much. So really this, and he brings the other way also. He says, why do we say every single day, Yan Chadonai, Yom Tzaratzgecha Hashem Elohei Yaakov? Why? Why does it say Hashem, the God of Yaakov Avinu, should answer you on the day where it's difficult for you? Why the God of Yaakov? Say the God of Abraham, say the God of Yitzchak. Many say Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, say all of them. Why Bedavka Yaakov? He brings a very fascinating thought. The Ben Ish Chai says a person can have two different types of midat adin on him. Meaning to say that every single person, nobody's perfect. Everybody is going to have judgment on him, and he's going to have chesed, kindness on him. Nobody is going to be fully right? So he says, but there's two different types of judgments that can be on a person. There could be judgment on a person from Midas HaChesed, there could be judgment on a person from Midas HaDin. What do I mean by that? Is that even when there's judgment on a person, the judgment on a person can be from the chesed, from the kindness, or it could be from the din, from the judgment. And if you say you can have like a dual judgment, or you can have like a chesed, a kindness in that judgment. What does that mean? What's the difference between those two? The Ben Ish Chai says, for example, he says, Yoked Yaakov Avinu, right? Yaakov Avinu, he thought that his brother Esau was going to kill him, right? And he lived through the whole event emotionally, mentally, it gave him a lot of anguish. But when it came to the moment, the whole situation was completely different, right? And he brings examples of Yaakov Avinu's life like that. He thought Yosef HaTzadik was dead, and it gave him anguish for so many years. He suffered thinking Yosef HaTzadik is dead, but at the end Yosef HaTzadik wasn't dead, he was alive. He's like, that's why we ask that in our difficult days we should be saved in the name of the God of Yaakov Avinu. Why? Because Yaakov Avinu's difficulties, mostly all of them, were all emotionally and mentally. They were not actually physically played out. What does he mean by that? He says, for example, imagine a person puts a very expensive diamond in his pocket and he needs to travel from one place to the next place with this diamond. And he's traveling with it, right? And suddenly, he looks in his pocket, he sees it's not there. He's like, oh, I can't believe I lost it. $20,000 down the garbage. I can't believe I lost it. He starts to look, he can't find it anywhere. He says, why? And he starts to have anguish, that's it, it's gone, right? He already, he starts to pain him, right? He says, then suddenly he remembers, he left it at home. He left it somewhere at home. He's like, oh wow, Baruch Hashem. He says, really, the person was supposed to lose it, and he was supposed to lose the money. But since he had Zuchuyot, he had this Midah of Chesed in the Midah of the Din, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, you know what? I'll let it play out in a person's mind, I'll let it play out in a person's emotions, and it'll be considered as if it happened. Verstehst? Some people don't have that. They have the judgment with the judgment, two judgments. That what? That not only is the judgment supposed to happen, but it's actually going to happen. He's going to lose the diamond, he's going to lose the money. Right? Some people, they were supposed to lose that amount of money, but they had some zuchuyot, they had something that was supposed to save them from it. It says, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes it that it plays itself out in a person's mind and a person's feelings, and it's as if it already happened.
So both positive and negative. If you're
the positive also.
If you're a pessimist, you always think negative. Oh, I might invest here and I lose.
Not just to be, the point. I'm trying to get somewhere, right? But when a person's positive also, when a person dwells too much, I'm going to make this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and then this is going to happen. A person's already coming to the results and what he's going to do with every single thing that everything happen. He says such a person, the Ben Ish Chai says, his mind has the ability to play out everything that's supposed to happen as if it already happened. And therefore when he'll get to there, it won't happen.
Wow.
It's a very scary thought, right? So what is a person supposed to do? He's supposed to do normal status, but don't dwell on things too much. He says a person's mind can always wander around. A person's mind is always thinking. A person's mind is always all over the place. He says, but what? He says if a person could use his mind to think about mitzvot, to think about Hashem, to think about Torah, right? Sometimes a person's not doing anything. Say some tefillin by heart. Think about the mitzvah of loving Hashem. Look at the sun, say, wow, look at the beautiful sun Hashem created. Look at the beautiful moon Hashem created. Think about all the chesed that Hashem does for you in life. You could use your mind to be mekayim mitzvot, but instead a person lets his mind wander around and think of nonsense. If anything, a person's mind can work against him when he thinks too much about something like we just mentioned. Right? And so therefore, instead of making a mitzvah, he goes and he thinks about nonsense, he doesn't have it out. He says, but the fact that a person could have used his mind for holier things and used his mind for nonsense, right? It's like they tell you, right? If you're going to be davening and thinking about business, you're not going to get not the business and not the davening. If you're going to be in the middle of a business deal, you're going to be thinking about eating in a restaurant, you're going to miss out on the business. You have to be in the moment of what you're doing, right? Don't let your mind wander around too much. If you're davening, put your mind to davening. If you're learning, put your mind to learning. If you're working, put your mind to working. If you're home with your kids, put your mind to spending time with your kids, right? Don't be all over the place with your mind. That's a side point also. A person should always be focused on what he's doing. Right? Person, there's no point of a person being in one place and thinking about another. You're not gaining both, right? But he says over here, a person's mind is always wandering. A person's traveling. A person's thinking about things. There's so many things a person could be thinking about. But he says a person should try to think about loving Hashem and the mitzvah of loving Hashem. When a person thinks like that, right? It became a mitzvah every single moment is getting closer to Hashem. Every single time a person thinks about the mitzvah of loving Hashem and coming close to Hashem, that in of itself, those thoughts bring a person closer to Hashem. It brings more and more kiddusha to a person's neshama. He says there's two different love. he says a person can love Hashem because he loves himself, or a person can really love Hashem. Right? Ki yiten lelibo. Generally, people love other people when they benefit from them. You know, like the Hasidic Rebbe one time told us one of his Hasidim, he's eating the fish. He's like, no, how's the fish? He's like, Rebbe, I love fish. He's like, you don't love fish. He's like, you love yourself. He's like, if you would love the fish, you would let the fish swim. Right? You're eating the fish, you say you love the fish, you really love yourself. Generally, people, they love those that they receive from. Even if somebody gives you somewhat of hana, you love people that you're receiving from. So you might love the person, but really love yourself. Because you love them because they're making you feel good, or because they're doing something good for you. Right? So people that make you feel good, you're going to say, oh, I love this person very much. Do you really love them? You really love yourself. Because they make you feel good, so you love them. He says, imagine if a person gives you all of your parnasa. Imagine all of your sustenance in life is from this person. Which parnasa is very important. It's what makes a lot of things in life happen. And he gives you everything that you need in life. And he's always kind to you. Right? So you think to yourself, wow, how can I ever pay this person back? Imagine a person is stuck in a difficult situation, right? And he doesn't know what to do financially. Somebody tells you, don't worry, I'll bring you into a good business deal. And he doesn't need you, but he's bringing you in and he's giving you cuts, right? And he's making you do some stuff. Even though he doesn't need you, why? Just to help you out. You feel like indebted to the person. He helped you in a situation and you were able to pick yourself up from that moment, right? Even if you would live, how could you pay gratitude to such a person? Say thank you. Okay, so you say thank you, right? Imagine if he would ask you for a big favor, of course you would do it for him, right? The amount that he helped you in life. Imagine if somebody came and a person had a very big medical expense, chas v'shalom, and needed $700,000 to make this procedure happen. He didn't have the money, insurance to pay for it. Imagine his friend came who really liked him and said, listen, I'll pay for your whole procedure, I want you to get better. Right? Or if a person donated a kidney to somebody, right? Or if a person took a person out of jail, say a person, God forbid, got locked up, and 10 years, chas v'shalom, and nobody knew how to get him out, and one of his best friends went all out and about and got him out after 2 years. How much would you feel indebted and grateful for this person? Imagine even the more so if a person saved you from death. Imagine if a person saved for another person from death. Even the more so how much a person would feel indebted to the person. Right? He said there's so many different levels that a person can feel indebted and love a person more and more based on how much that person did for you. He says even the more so, how much do we have to love HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Right? How much more do we have to love HaKadosh Baruch Hu? But what's the problem here? You know what the problem is? How come we don't feel it to Hashem? How come we don't feel that gratitude and that love and that appreciation? And how come we don't wake up in the morning and want to thank Hashem for everything that He does to us because we get so used to it. We don't even see it in the picture. Right? We think everything is normal. When we get used to it, we're used to our bodies working, and our kidneys and our hearts and our lungs and our eyes and the air being free and the sun and the moon and oxygen and the whole entire world giving us everything that is giving us every single day. We're used to it. And therefore, since we're used to it, we take it for granted. But reality is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving it to us every single day. Every single day. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted, we wouldn't have nothing. And if Hashem wanted, we would have everything. So he says, imagine everything that happens to a person in life, whether it comes directly min hashamayim, and a person sees things min hashamayim, or a person, somebody came and he helped somebody. He says everything is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts in people's hearts to help each other. He says at the end of the day, everybody's a shliach from Hashem. Like the Chavot HaLevavot writes, that nobody could do anything bad to you or good to you, not unless it was predetermined min hashamayim. That means that it was predetermined min hashamayim, that a person will get a certain opportunity in life, suddenly Hashem will send somebody to him at the right time and the right place, and everything will work out. Who sent him here? It wasn't, oh, I got lucky, I woke up this time, I came here, I went there. HaKadosh Baruch Hu orchestrated the whole event, they should meet him, and Hashem put in his heart in order to be able to put you in a situation in order to be able to get you whatever you need. Right? Or a person's shidduch, right? A person finds his wife. Hashem sent the right shotgun to put them together, or put them in the right place to find each other. Right? All of these things, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu orchestrates things, and He puts in people's hearts in order to be good to each other. For example, you have somebody, you come to him, you say, oh, can we make some sort of a deal? He says, no, it's not really him. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want you to have it with him. So Hashem created that it'll be a no-no. Right? But sometimes the things work out differently. But he's trying to say that everything in the world, everything around the person that happens is all rooted in Hashemayim. Before a person is born, it says the person's going to marry this following wife. Before a person is born, it's already predetermined which house he's going to have. It says, Bayit Zelupuni, right? Everything is already predetermined, and it's just a person playing out what Hashem is already giving him in life. Right? It says, imagine how much HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving us, and how much how much difficulties Hashem saves us from, and everything that Hashem does for us, even the more so a person has to love Hashem. Now that was the most important. I want to get into halacha, hilchot chinuch. It's a very important halachot. Right, hilchot chinuch. A lot of people are not aware, right, the halachot that they're obligated when it comes to their children. People think sometimes children as like, okay, you don't have to really pay so much attention to them. The school will teach them, they'll get older, they'll figure it out. Or sometimes people go and they think Chayish is small, he could do this, right? You see your kid, for example, outside, right? He's sitting and digging holes, and fixing up the holes outside. It's a doraita, right? He's sitting there, so you think to yourself, he's still small, it's not such a big deal, right? Or you want to tell your kid to turn on the light or to plug something inside. But really, these are all very big problems. These are all asur. The Shulchan Aruch writes as follows. It says, "Katan ochel nevedot, en bedim mitzuvin hafrisho." It says that if a little child, right, is eating things that are not kosher, the Beis Din, which means that random people at the outside are not obligated to get involved and stop this child from eating something not kosher. Right? If I see your 2-year-old kid in the park, right, eating a non-kosher lollipop, I'm not obligated to go and take it away from him and start aggressing him. Aval Aviv, but his father, Mitzuveli Gorbo, is obligated to stop him and to take it away from him and to separate him from this issue. Meaning to say that if a father sees a child doing something austere, he must stop him, he must take it away from him, he must remove him from what he's doing. Right? That's in regards to taking him away, stopping him. He says over here, any issue is like that. Even Chilul Shabbat, right? Chilul Shabbat, if you see a child is doing, you must stop him from Chilul Shabbat. Is that what? That a person's father is obligated to be mechanech his father, his children, boys and girls are obligated to the father. Not only that, the way you raise a child when he's small, what you put into him from the age of 2 to like 13, it stays with him for the rest of his life. After that, it's already very hard. It's like a tree that grows. If it goes crooked already, when it's small, you can still make it straight. Once it's big, it's very hard to already make it straight. It's about impossible, right? David HaMelech compares children to olives, like taking olive oil out of olives. It's very hard. It takes a lot of work before you can take out a little bit. Chinuch is a big avodah. It doesn't start when they're older. It starts when they're younger. What you teach them, the examples that you make for them, that's what they're going to pick up, right? The way you are is the way what your children are going to pick up from you. That's how they're going to be eventually, and that stays within them for a long time. What a person internalizes into himself as a kid stays with him forever. It's very hard to change that when he gets older, right? He says that there are those poskim that say that the mitzvah of chinuch is also on the mother. Really, the mitzvah of chinuch is on the father, not on the mother. Right? The mother doesn't have to make sure the kid wakes up for shacharit in the morning. The mother doesn't have to teach the kid children the brachot. The mother doesn't have to teach children Hilchot Shabbat. That's all the father's obligation. The mother, who's with the children more, has to teach the children their affairs, to behave nicely, to talk nicely, to be patient, not to react quickly, to be shalom with each other. If you see children fighting, immediately separate them, teach them that they can't fight, that they have shalom, they have to have peace with each other all the time. They have to develop these mentalities within them. It becomes nature when they're a young age. Right? So he says that a father sees his children doing something austere, even if it's Issa D'Rabbanan, the father is obligated to get involved and to be able to stop them. To get involved and to be able to stop them. He says over here that if a child is being Mechalel Shabbat, is breaking the Shabbat, and his father doesn't stop him, and he's obligated to stop him, say for example you have a 6-year-old kid, right? And he's doing something that's a Sudoraita, he's sitting there ripping trees, ripping flowers, and you're looking at him, you're not doing anything, right? He says, the Brisker Rav says, Rav Chaim Rav says, it's as if the father himself is Mechalel Shabbat. His father himself broke that Shabbat. Why? You have an obligation to right now take him away. You're not taking him away, it's as if you yourself broke Shabbat. Mamash, you just broke Shabbat, because you have an obligation to be mafashim. You have to make sure that you mechanech your children. You can't just let your children do whatever they want. You see your kid playing with the light, Chaya Neshamaniki, not allowed, it's asur for him. And since it's asur for Midin Chinuch, you're the one responsible. Everything that he does, you're responsible. You're taking responsibility for this.
Regardless of what age, Rabbi?
So we're going to differentiate. So if he's like 2, 3, he doesn't understand anything, then you don't have to stop him when he does something asur. Even if he does something asur d'oraita, you don't have to stop him. Ripping flowers outside. Why? When they're at the age that you tell them you're not allowed to do this, it's asur, and you explain it to them, and they'll know for next time not to do it, then already you have to stop them. But if you tell them, don't rip the flower, they're going to rip the flower. They don't understand what you're telling them. They even if you explain, they're not going to understand. They're too young. 2, 3 years old, they're too young to understand anything. there you don't have to stop them. Even really at Halacha, even if they're eating something not kosher, and they go and there's a kid in the park that gives them a gummy bear that has a pork fat in there, and they eat it at 2 years old. Really, at Halacha, you're not obligated to stop them, right? Because they're still very small. But the Rama writes that if a child will eat these things, even if a child will eat non-kosher milk as a baby, it says it develops an evil nature in the child, and he's going to have bad midot when he gets older. And it creates timtum alev, and it does not allow the child to get close to Hashem. It makes it very hard for him. He cannot connect to things which are kedusha. He cannot connect to spirituality. It just doesn't connect, right? It creates that timtum alev. The Pri Chadash writes that many children were going off the derech because their parents were serving them food that all this produce needed to be checked for bugs, and they weren't careful, and the children were eating all this produce the parents were not careful to clean for bugs, and it contaminated their hearts, and they were going off the derech because of that. The Pri Chadash writes, very scary. Right? The machalot asarot, to eat things are very severe, right? So even though Pi Halacha 2-3 years old, you're not obligated to stop the child, right? But you should know that it's going to contaminate his heart. Now, when he already understands 5, 6, even 4.5, like that, when he already understands, you tell him this, you know, you're not allowed that, you're not allowed, right? Then you have to separate him from eating something not kosher, right? Even if it's asud rabbanan, you have to separate him, you're not allowed to give it to him.
But if the person 65 years old, I see he eating not kosher.
65?
Yeah, I told him it's not kosher place. But he continued eating. What do you do?
Right now, I'm talking about chinuch.
Yeah, but
Chinuch is with children. When it comes to other people, there's no din chinuch. You have a din of hochiach tochiach et amitecha. You have to rebuke other people, but you have to know how to do it. Sometimes, if you're going to tell them right now to momentum, if it's not going to help anything, then maybe you're not obligated to say anything because it's not going to help anything. But you do have an obligation to try to figure out a way to help this person. Find out where he davens, talk to his Rav, maybe try to get him to a shir. Sometimes it's a slow process. A lot of times at that age, at 65 already, it's very difficult to change people. They're already so engrossed in their life, it's very, very, very difficult. Maybe if you try and you try and you try and you try, it'll happen. It could happen. I've seen people will change. But it's very difficult. Once a person is already so used to it, it's very, very difficult. Right? You have to somehow get him out of it. Yeah, but right now, I'll tell you a sad joke. There was one time, right, a Jewish guy, he's sitting down, he's eating a burger in McDonald's. You know this? And his rabbi is standing outside and is watching him, right? Knocking on the window. He goes like this to the rabbi, continues eating. He comes out, the rabbi tells him, you don't see I'm watching you eat, you have so much chutzpah, at least you don't stop. He said, I figured, Rabbi, if you're watching, it's under rabbinical supervision, it's okay. Right? Right? Unfortunately, it's a corrupt way of thinking, but we have such a way of thinking. Right? But here we're talking about chinuch. Right? If a child, I'll make it in short, if a child is young, 2-3 years old, and he's doing something asur, your own child, you don't have to stop him. If he's older than 3 years old, if he's doing something asur, you must stop him. But you're not allowed to give him something asur. That means even if a child is 3 months old and you give him something not kosher, it's asur d'oraita. You're not allowed to give your child something not kosher. It's asur d'oraita. Your child's 2 years old. You bring him to the light switch, tell him, and he goes and he switches off the light. You're over an isur d'rabanan. Why? Because it's asur for you to make him do an isur. That at any age. To give a child isur or to make him do isur, that at any age is asur. Even from the day he's born. It's also for you to give him anything asur. But if a child is doing something asur himself, until the age of 2-3, the father doesn't have to stop him. However, even then, the father, when it comes to things which are not kosher to Allah, should stop him because it's going to contaminate his soul. It's going to contaminate his neshama. You can't put it in front of him either and say, okay, he's going to take it himself. That's for sure it's asur.
Some parents use their kids to turn on the lights on Shabbos.
You're not allowed to. I just said you're not allowed to. The Shulchan Aruch says, look at Shulchan Aruch says, V'chein asur lehargilo b'chilul Shabbat. You're not allowed to tell your children to do things to break Shabbat, even if it's asur d'rabanan. You're not allowed. Right? It's completely asur. Right? What about if the father is not raising the children? Say, whatever case scenario happened, if the father is not raising the children, then the father does not have a chiyuv chinuch. The father doesn't have a chiyuv chinuch. Why? Because the children, but when they send the children to school, the malama, the rabbis there in school, have the obligation of the father to be mechanech the children, so they have the same status. It makes a very big difference. Because me, if I see a 5-year-old kid or a 6-year-old kid that's not my kid, eating something not kosher, I don't have an obligation to go and to stop him and to create a whole event. I have to tell his father that your son is eating something in kosher, but I don't have an obligation within chinuch to stop him. And he's too young for me to go and be hochiach tochiach, but I don't have an obligation. But a Rebbe in yeshiva who's being paid, he takes the place of a father. So he's more stringent, he has to be more careful. Right? He says over here, like we said before, the midot and stuff like that is on the mother. The mother has to teach her children just to be a good example. She has to talk quietly, talk patiently, teach the children to be calm. The way you react to your children is how your children are going to react to other people also. Talk is cheap. Your children see who you are and that's who they are. You can tell your children anything you want, but if they see you're different, they're going to be like that. Right? Your children have to see you in what you say. It says Rabelsky, his children say that he never told his children anything. They just took a personal example from him and they learned how to be in life. Why? Because they just saw who he was. Right? Now, we'll discuss one or two more questions. Right? It says over here, what about giving a child to eat before Kiddush? Now, you have an obligation for when your child is already small, 2-3 years old, you have to put on kippah already. 2-3 years old already, you have to put on kippah.
If you don't want, throw away.
You have to train for when he's smaller. 2 even already start putting it on him. He doesn't want when he doesn't want. When he's already 3, 4 he doesn't want. Because he's already used to running around without kippah for 2 years, now it's a headache for him. But when he first starts to walk, he starts to put it on, he gets used to it. He gets used to it. Right? Once they get used to not wearing it, it's very hard to get him to change. They already don't want to wear it. No, you can't force it. Tell him, okay, on Monday, Tuesday you wear kippah. Wednesday, Thursday you don't kippah. You have to slowly train him into it. Right? And tzitzit, already at the age of 3 years old, must wear tzitzit. With the bracha already you have to start teaching him. Child wake up in the morning, you must do netilat yadayim already from the first day they're born. When you do netilat yadayim. The Ben Ish Chai says it's a segula for the child to become kadosh. If the child didn't do netilat yadayim in the morning, even if he's 2 years old, right? We know that if a person doesn't do netilat yadayim in the morning and he touches food, that food becomes asur to eat. B'diavad, it depends what it is, right? If it's an apple or an orange, something like that, you could take a keli, a vessel, and watch it 3 times. It's okay, you could eat it, right? But if it's something like soup, right, or food, right, put his finger in it, right? It becomes a problem because you have contamination. You have tumah in your fingers, and it contaminates the food. Now you eat it, it contaminates you. So you gotta be careful before you touch any food in the morning to wash your hands. Even a child that will touch something, it will contaminate it. If it's something that you could wash, you have to wash. B'diavad, if you can't wash it, b'diavad it's mutar to eat. If a person wants to be machmir, that's good. But b'diavad it's mutar to eat. Therefore, a person, child, wake up in the morning, first thing you have to train your child, right? Go, wash your hands, bring your kid as soon as they wake up, come, already for one day, as soon as they start to walk, on their own already, they have to start right away, before that you have to do it to them. Right? A child has to know already from a young age. Once a child is used to all these things from a young age, it becomes nature, it becomes habit, it becomes much easier. But when you wait till 4 or 5, when the kid is already all over the place, and then you tell him to do it, it's very hard for him because you're making new habits. He's not used to these things. It's a little bit more difficult. From the beginning, it's much easier already. They train into it. Right? That's in regards to a child. You have kippah, you have tzitzit, you have netilat yadayim. From the first moment, your child already knows how to speak words. You have to already start teaching them brachot. Right? To say bracha on things. Right? They're not allowed to eat without bracha, children. Children could say brachot for 5 years and they still don't remember to say bracha. You always have to remind them. Bracha. What bracha is this? This, you have to teach them brachot. You're even allowed to answer amen after the bracha. It's a machloket, but most poskim opinion, you can answer amen after bracha. Even if the child's 2 years old, it's okay, you can answer amen after the child's bracha. I remember when my kids first learned about tzitzit. I was like 3 years old, 2 years old, I remember this. Right? He didn't understand this concept of tzitzit. He thought whatever strings you see is like tzitzit. He's sitting at a table, he takes a tablecloth and those strings, he says, Al mitzvah tzitzit, and he starts kissing it. they get the point, you know, they have to take some time to figure out, but you have to train them from when they're very, very small. Right? A child, he already knows how to say words, how to read. Every single night you have to go to his bed, tell him cover your hands, put your eyes, Shema Yisrael Hashem. Already from the age of 2.5, 3 years old, from when they start to speak, already you have to start repeating after you every single night. You cannot be lazy. Every single night. Once they get used to it, it becomes nature. If you're going to want to do it later, it's going to become very hard for them. Right? If you see a child speaking Lashon Hara, you must stop him. Rav Moshe Feinstein writes, a Rebbe in yeshiva is not allowed to tell one boy, who broke this? Tell me which boy broke this. Not allowed. Why? You're teaching him to speak Lashon Hara about other boys. You're not allowed. right? There are those that disagree, but the point being is that your children have to be taught to speak the truth at a young age. There was a boy, the brother down one of the Sifarim, that he was always very honest. They asked him, how did you become so honest? He said, my father when I was small, God forbid if he would catch me being dishonest, I would get severely punished. And he trained me that you always have to speak the truth, right? Always have to speak the truth. And that's true. You have to train your children from when they're small. Don't ever lie. If you see them lying, you punish them, you take something away. Tell them you speak only the truth, I give you a reward. They have to understand. Sheker is no good, emes is good. You hear them speaking Lashon Hara, you say, I don't want to hear Lashon Hara. Already from when they're small, they want to say, he did this, he did that, something broke, he did it. They blame the other sibling. I don't want to hear it. You don't want to hear it, right? Sometimes kids become very smart, right? What happened? One time I was teaching my kids, right? You know, the idea that Hashem created the world and Hashem does everything. So one of my kids broke my glasses. I came, I said to my oldest son, I said, Banay, who broke this? So my Hashem broke it, he tells it. Right? Sometimes they might take advantage also. But the point being is, already from a very young age, you have to start all these things in mitzvah chinuch. To give a child something asur is completely asur. To tell a child to do this, to do that, not allowed. Even at a young age, not allowed. You're not allowed to say they're small, they're like this, they're like that. No. From a young age, you already have to start everything with them, right? If a child is 3 years old, you bring him to shul already, you get him a talit gadol also, the ones that fit him. Already get talit gadol, get him used to it already, right? A child already that understands, 3, 4 years old, already starts to understand things, you have to already start to get him used to it. 5, 6 years old, bring him to shul with you, a little bit. Let him sit down what you're doing Arabic. Everybody says Shema, let him say Shema. Let him answer Amen a few Kadishim and tell him he can go outside afterwards and play. Not too much. At that age you can't keep him too much in shul. But what? Already to start training them. Don't wait till they're very older. When they get very older and they're not used to anything, it's very hard to get them to be used to anything. Guess we'll stop here and we'll continue next time.
Thank you. Thank you.